Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Leading the Charge. Matt Bove, Dom Tibbetts joining you Monday, March 9th, the date on the calendar, and there are plenty of things to talk about this evening. Hi, Dom. How are you, sir?
Hi, Matt. I'm good, sir. I am probably like the city of Buffalo. Ears are still ringing for the 19,000 plus that were there at the KeyBank Center last night. Crazy atmosphere, crazy game. Feeling like a little Victory Monday here. I said it last night. We
Yeah.
talk so much about Victory Mondays with the Buffalo Bills. Probably got to start doing that with the Buffalo Sabres now.
Yeah, let's kind of peel back the curtain a little bit here. So I always approach things as like, okay, what is going to be the first thing we talk about from a sports standpoint for the day? And then we'll kind of work our way down, right? That's what you're taught. That's how we put together everything that happens in a newscast. And on my way in today, I'm thinking to myself, the Bills would need to make an absolutely major move to kind of take the shine away from the Sabres today. And up to this point, that has not happened. They still have a couple hours. There's still plenty of time. We will talk about the Bills for sure. But I want to start the show talking about the Sabres because honestly, I think they deserve it. They've earned it. They have played so unbelievably well and have people so unbelievably excited that I think it's a really fun time in Western New York for hockey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can hear that with the energy that was inside the arena last night. I think it was the Sabre social team who made the video of all the people walking out of the arena last night. The city, man, has just waited 14 years for this team to break a playoff drought. They've waited so long for this team to be good and the level, not just good, but like really good. Like, oh my God, these guys could go win the Eastern Conference and potentially contend for a Stanley Cup level good. I think they've proven that here too. So not only is it exciting for them, but it also like inside the locker room, like you have to also kind of, have a little bit of maybe a sense of reality for a guy like Rasmus Dahlin, who I talked to after the game yesterday. That guy has been through the ups and downs, and we know it's been mostly downs with the Sabres organization since he was drafted here. He is now finally, and along with other guys like Tage and Alex, kind of the first guys that come to mind too, they're finally seeing the years of having to go through the highs and lows and the years of having to go through those lean years and the struggle of, what was it, in 22-23, them coming up a point short of making the playoffs when Don Granato was the head coach. And, so many of those like blunder stories, the heartache, the, oh my God, the Sabres, I can't believe they're this bad kind of narrative that's been around them. Well, it's finally gone. And I think you can sense that inside the locker room, and you can sense that definitely with the fan base right now. The city of Buffalo is buzzing. And I remember I think you told this to me right when I kind of first started, because we started right in football season when I got here in June of 2022. But this city, when hockey is buzzing, which it hasn't for a while, but when it is, it's noticeable, and it's a complete difference. And the city is definitely buzzing. That's for sure.
I grew up at a time when the Sabres were the hottest ticket in town. Like, I'm from Western New York, and I was in my peak years of learning and following and falling in love with sports in the mid 2000s. And those Sabres teams were so much fun coming out of the lockout. 05-06, that team surprised everybody and went on a run to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. The next year, they were the best team in hockey. Then they fall short again in the Eastern Conference in the finals. They had a couple of years where they had some minor step backs, but then they got back to the playoffs a few years later. So, like, for me, growing up, the Sabres were the main act. Now, the Bills, the NFL, that is still always what more people around the country are going to be talking about. I understand that. That's not lost on me. But there's something about when the Sabres are good in this town. Think about how many games there are. Think about the idea of a playoff series and the storylines that develop with a series, this push that they're going to have. With football, you have a game, then you wait another 7 days, then you do it again. With hockey, it's like, okay, they played Saturday night, they get a win. They play Sunday night, it's a huge win. Now they got another game on Tuesday, and then on Thursday, and then on Saturday. So there's just so many different layers to it. It is just a really fun time for hockey fans. I've said it a couple times. It's like, hey, good things come to those who wait. Sabres fans have waited a really long time, and they have been rewarded with a team that's just really talented. And Dom, you were there last night.
Mm-hmm.
I have been fortunate. One of the perks of this job is that I have been able to experience and be in the building for a lot of really cool sporting events. I was not there last night. You were there. Let me tell you, watching that game on TV, I had major FOMO. I was like, man, I am so mad that I am not there. A
Yeah,
Sunday with my family is nice, but when that game was going, I was like, man, that building must be ready to fall over.
well, it's funny because Tuesday night, the Vegas game, just knowing kind of the circumstances around that one, it's an Eichel return, but it's the first home game since the Olympic break. Tage is a gold medalist. They're doing the whole thing there too. And you were at that one. I wasn't. I had a little bit of FOMO in that kind of aspect too. But yeah, it was the electric buzz, the atmosphere in there. I think at one point with it's roughly 6 minutes to go. I'll call this behind the curtains too of what we do. And I think you're kind of the same process as me here, Matt. So when we sit up in the press box at a Sabres game with about 6 minutes to go, we start making our way downstairs to go do the interviews in the locker room with the players after the game. And then we wait for Lindy Ruff in the post-game media availability room. Well, as I stand up to go walk towards the elevator, take me down from the press box to the bottom floor, Zucker scores the game-tying goal. Place goes nuts. I thought the roof was quite literally going to have to be re-repaired. It was going to get blown off. And then we get downstairs, and outside of the media room, there's a big TV that a lot of like the security people and a couple other reporters are watching it on. And Doan scores a power play goal, which is just It felt like the arena was quite literally going to collapse. Like it sounded like an earthquake was going off. I could hear like the feet, the crunching of the cement. I was like, this is crazy. It's electric, a little terrifying. But I also think like this is like a moment think of the people like you, Matt, who grew up here, and like the fans of this team have waited so long for this kind of opportunity. That 60 minutes of hockey last night could almost wipe away 14 years of just horrendous hockey and horrendous hockey memories of being a team that has been laughed at for that amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking last night, I thought about two things, and they're not perfect comparisons, but they're the things that initially came to mind. This to me does feel very 05, 06 Buffalo Sabres. And, my position now is very different than it was then, as a diehard Sabres fan growing up. Obviously, now you cover the team. So you're kind of thinking about everything from a coverage standpoint. But I'm like, man, this team is good and this team is talented. And they're probably also a little bit naive, too, which is a good thing, right? Like they could get into the playoffs, and I don't think the moment is going to be too big for them because, hey, like
they
nobody
don't know what
thought
the moment
they were going
is.
to be. That's what I mean. They don't know what it is.
Know. Yeah.
Yeah. And, there's certainly playoff experience in that room. So that's one of the things I thought about. The other thing I thought about a little bit, and it's not a perfect comparison, but I always think back to with the Bills because they've been so good for so long. It felt like that team truly arrived on Thanksgiving in 2019 when they beat the Cowboys, and very specifically on a 4th and 1 that Josh Allen fumbled, picked up, and still was able to get the first down. It's one of the most impressive individual plays I've ever seen live. And it felt like from that moment on, it was like, okay, the Bills are here. Last night, the Sabres game to me felt a little bit like that, of their arrival kind of for a national audience. Here in Buffalo, they've been playing really great hockey for several months. When they beat the Stars on New Year's Eve this year, I was like, whoa, like this team's pretty legit. That's impressive. But so many people were talking about this game last night, and it's because of the fights, and it's because of all the goals and all of the stuff that surrounded it. But they beat, in my opinion, the best team in the Eastern Conference. They have now beaten them twice in 8 days. They certainly looked like they belong with that team, in that conversation with that team. And it's nice to see all of these young guys kind of finally elevate up to the level that we thought they were, capable of.
I think it's a bigger deal too, Matt, on a kind of a more bigger picture kind of outlook on this. I go back to the Olympics. Buffalo was the top rated hockey market for the U.S. gold medal match between U.S. and Canada. Buffalo is a hockey city. And when you look at the Stanley Cup viewership around the country, the city of Buffalo, who, mind you, the Sabres have not been in that stage and been in the late part of the playoffs, haven't been in the playoffs in that amount of time. But the city of Buffalo, the viewership numbers for the Stanley Cup and in playoff hockey in the NHL is among the best in the country. So I think of on a bigger scale like that, that is why you're seeing people have so much buzz around this, because the city really embraces the hockey culture more. And I grew up, for those who are watching is listening, I grew up 2 hours down the road in Syracuse. I promise you, not anywhere close. Hockey culture escapes, I think, the second you probably, and I don't want to speak for Rochester, but I know it sure as heck doesn't make it past exit 43 eastbound on the I-90. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
All right. We will talk a little bit more about the Sabres coming up in just a minute, but we also do need to talk about the Bills with NFL free agency. So that and more coming up on Leading the Charge. How was it down at the arena? Oh, all right, welcome back, everyone. Matt Bove, Dom Tibbetts. So a lot of things happening as far as local sports are concerned today. Obviously, the Buffalo Sabres find themselves in first place in the Atlantic Division. It's the highest they have been at this point in the year since 2011. So it's been a really, really long time. It's also the start of what is called in the NFL. Now they call it the negotiation period, which then last year
That's
I think
not as
was
cool
referred.
sounding.
No, legal tampering was the word that they
Yeah.
have, the phrase that they have been using for the last couple of years. Let's make something that sounds really complicated not complicated.
Mhm.
Free agency starts on Wednesday. Teams were able to start negotiating with free agents today. So a lot of players have already agreed to deals with their new teams. They can't officially put pen to paper until Wednesday. So this happened at noon. Now, for the Bills, there have been far more departures than there have been additions, at least to this point. So we'll start with the one singular addition, and then we'll get to the departures. So D. Alford is a cornerback who the Buffalo Bills have agreed to a 3-year deal worth up to $21 million. Played last year in Atlanta, has spent his entire NFL career in Atlanta. Dom, just
Mhm.
your initial thoughts on the addition. I know it just happened, so obviously we got to still do more research.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna sit here and tell anybody that I studied enough Atlanta Falcon football to know what D.
Yeah.
Alford brings to the table here too. I just do know that it's an interesting pickup because to me, Matt, I have one or two thought processes when this move came down when I was doing our live shots outside the KeyBank Center was this is either going to be a move to provide depth in the cornerback room, or based on the money that I'm seeing there too, this feels like the very much the Taron Johnson substitution.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't know how the nickelback forms into the Jim Leonard defensive scheme here too, and I'm not going to pretend like I'm going to understand what Jim Leonard's going to bring and what the exact pieces he needs. But that seems probably more likely given the money that Buffalo is going to
Hmm.
give him in this situation. So just maybe moving an older guy out of here, giving Taron a shot in LA now, and then, bringing in a new guy that can, kind of be molded a little bit more under this Jim
Hmm.
Leonard defense.
Yeah, my thought is basically what you said. He's a Taron Johnson replacement. He's cheaper. And
Yeah.
for a position that's not going to be as valuable with the Jim Leonard defense, I think they wanted somebody who they believe in. And I'm not saying that they didn't with Terran. I'm just thinking they wanted somebody new that was a little bit more affordable and probably a little bit younger, maybe has a little bit more explosiveness in his game at this point in his career. The reported numbers that we'll see the next couple days are always kind of more juiced up from the agents to make it seem like they or their client got a much better deal than they ultimately did. I think when it's all said and done and the dust settles, this D. Elford deal will be a lot different than the $21 million we're seeing right now. But I still think that right now he slots in as kind of their starting nickel cornerback. So that's the addition. Now let's talk about the subtractions. Anybody in particular stand out? I think there's three notable subtractions that we've learned about today, and I'll let you take dealer's choice on any of them that you want to talk about.
The most notable, I think you're going to have the same answer, man. It's David Edwards. I think it's
For
just
sure.
because of how solidified the offensive line is. And you kind of got when the 4-year deal that the Bills have agreed to with Connor McGovern that will go official Wednesday kind of happened over this weekend. That to me signified, I think, to everybody else here that they're going to have to move on from David Edwards. It didn't ever feel like you're going to have the money to be able to pay those guys because they both deserved a pretty big payday. And that's what David Edwards got himself now with the New Orleans Saints there too. So I think that's most notable because that's a big spot in that guard position now for probably an Alec Anderson to slide up into, right? Like that's been a really trusted unit for Josh Allen as well. The interesting one is Mitch Trubisky, only because what do the Bills do now at backup quarterback? Do they draft somebody, some depth guy in the 5th, 6th, 7th round? Do they go? And I'm looking at some of the quarterback numbers. I mean, Kenny Pickett, Matt, got reportedly $7.5 million to go to Carolina, or I believe, or wherever he's going. So, I think the Bills with Mitch Trubisky gone, which is not shocking, but it also puts them in a situation where they're going to have to maybe throw some money or trust some youth to come and back up Josh Allen.
You know who's going to be their next backup quarterback? You, Dom. You're going to be their next backup quarterback.
Sign me up.
Call GDAR. You would get a raise if you became a backup quarterback. They're getting $5 or $6 million a year right now. That's basically what Mitch Trubisky got. The other subtraction today, we talked about David Edwards. We talked about Mitch Trubisky. It's fullback Reggie Gilliam. Now, I am not going to tell you that the sky is falling because the Bills lost their fullback, but he was a nice player, and he was a really, really nice guy, worked his butt off, has been kind of an unsung hero for this offense for years. I mean, we're talking about somebody who plays in the run game. I mean, he plays like 20% of snaps. And they have Jackson Hawes now, who I'm sure they're going to start to be a little bit more creative with his usage. They're not redundant because one's a tight end and one is a fullback, but their primary functions are both blocking and paving the way for others. When I think of Reggie Gilliam, I will be thinking of him getting behind Josh Allen and trying to push him as hard as possible into the end zone. And that worked for a lot of times. Now, here's, I think, the thing that stings for the Bills. It's not the fact that they're losing him. It's the fact that they're losing him and he's staying in the division to go to the New England Patriots. So now you're going to have to see him a couple times a year. And that's a player who I think really kind of became, I don't want to say a fan favorite, but somebody who was always kind of like hey, that guy deserves more credit than he ultimately gets.
If I can just say one quick thing, because I know we have to toss a break here, Matt. Maybe this just proves that there is going to be an evolution in Joe Brady's offense, right? The need to not have a fullback, right? I think there's a lot of fans who are probably like, hey, if we get an evolution in the offense and Joe Brady's able to put the ball in Josh Allen's hands more and do a little bit more creative things with it, I think they are losing Reggie Gilliam is going to sit pretty well with them. I think people will not lose sleep over it.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about, I'll say quickly. So like we said, free agency doesn't officially open until Wednesday. If I'm looking down, if I'm looking around, I'm not zoning out from Dom, although I do sometimes do that. I'm trying to see if they have signed anybody so we can tell you as it's happening. So I'm
I've
searching on social media.
been doing the
Yeah,
same thing. It's okay.
everybody has been doing it all day. You're just rapidly refreshing your phones. Here's the positions I think they definitely need to address. I think they got to sign a defensive tackle. I think they need to sign an edge rusher. And I think they definitely need to sign a linebacker. Those are all of the positions, and a safety. Those are all of the positions that I'm anticipating they do something with sometime in the next at least couple days. That doesn't have to mean something happens tonight. There will be some other moves that probably surprise us. They'll probably bring back a couple people who we didn't anticipate them bring back. They're going to need to find a backup quarterback somewhere. So they've got some stuff that they need to do, but the big positions I'm paying attention to are linebacker, safety, defensive tackle, and defensive end. Once again, free agency officially begins on Wednesday. That's when teams can actually sign these players, but they could start talking to them earlier today. So that's why we've got some moves. All right. On the TV side of things, we are going to take one more quick break, and then Dom and I are going to give you our final thoughts as we wrap up this Monday's episode of Leading the Charge. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Matt Bove, Dom Tibbetts, a couple minutes here before we have to say goodbye. Dom, I like the idea of just kind of keeping final thoughts intact because this is what we do during the season. Have any final thoughts? It could be about the Bills. It could be about the Sabres. It could be about anything your heart desires.
Ooh. Final thoughts about anything. Man,
I have one if you want to brainstorm.
Yeah, you go first while I brainstorm.
Listen, my final thought is that I had a chance to bring my daughter to the Sabres game on Saturday, and it was an unbelievably cool full circle moment for me. You know, this is our first child. I love her more than literally anything. And being able to take her to a Sabres game was such a cool moment because those were such core memories for me growing up, going to sporting events, Sabres games in particular, with my dad, with my friends. It was something that I loved doing so much. I remember it would be something, if I found out I was going to a Sabres game, I would look forward to it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I think sometimes when you do this job, that becomes a little numb on you. You go to games so often that you take it for granted a little bit. And I hate that's the way that it's become, but it's just the reality. So being able to go to the game with her was so special because I got to share something that I love doing so much with her and kind of watch her take it all in. She will not remember this at all in a couple of years, but I'll remember it forever. And that was a really, really cool moment for me.
Dude, I don't know how I'm gonna top that. That's so nice. That's very
Yeah.
awesome. And for those who don't know, a little behind the scenes here, Matt texted me, said, "Hey, we're about to be on the video screen. Please get your phone out."
Yeah.
And I captured the moment when they popped on. I'll keep it on the Sabres. And I will say, I think one element that we don't talk a lot about, and it's not for any good or bad reason, just because a lot of focus on the players in this team,
Mhm.
but through the Sabres' rise over the last 3.5 months or so to getting to the place where they are atop the Atlantic Division, how sweet is this for Lindy Ruff? I mean, what a
Yeah.
story it's been for him to come back here this entire time, right? Like, has to, goes elsewhere, coaches the Devils for a while. I remember seeing him on the sideline of the Philly Bills game back in 2023 when he was still coaching the Devils.
Mhm.
He was on the Bills sideline there to watch this. Who
Mhm.
would have known about a year or so later he comes back, he inherits this team. The first year just does not go well last year. A lot of questions. Is Lindy Ruff the guy? What were we thinking to do? What were we thinking to begin with to bring this guy back here? But I think amidst all this, the Sabres rewriting a new chapter of their history and Lindy Ruff also having a piece of this. When you go back and look at last night, comparing that team to the 05-06 team,
Yeah.
who was the head coach? Lindy Ruff.
Dom Tibbetts, Matt Bove. Have a great night, everybody. We'll talk to you guys soon.